Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Germany once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while actually. I need to make sure that I get some more German beer reviews out there over the next few months. But for this review, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good few times before, and these guys were actually the brewery that kick-started my whole beer journey. And when I saw that they were releasing another new beer, I thought I have to get one of these to review here on the channel. So for this review then, we are going to go to Bamberg, which is to the northwest of Nuremberg in the north of Bavaria. That region, of course, is called Franken, and it's famous because it's got the highest density of breweries per head of population anywhere in the world. There's about 350 little breweries in there. It's very famous for its food, and it's actually quite cheap if you go there compared to other places, I would say. So definitely worth a visit if you get the chance. But like I say, we are going to go to Bamberg, which is actually very well known as a beer town, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Brauerei Heller, or as they're better known, Schlenkerla. And these guys, of course, are very famous for their Rauch beers, smoked beers, you know. Awesome, just powerful stuff. But yeah, for this review then, we're having a look at the Helles Schlenkerla Lagerbier Unfiltered edition. This is a special edition that's been released in early 2021. It comes in at 4.3% ABV, and it's basically an unfiltered version of their regular Helles lager that they do. So yeah, very curious to see what this one has in store for us. We got this beer here in Sweden as part of the Tillfälliga temporary assortment through Systembolaget on the 9th, I want to say, of March 2021. But yeah, definitely cool to have another Schlenkerla beer for you here on the channel. I never complain when we get new stuff from these guys. I was quite excited actually when I saw there was something new from them coming out. So fingers crossed it's as good as the other beers that we've had from these guys before, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. I love my traditional German beers, and you know, it's always cool to return to the brewery where everything began. But yeah, it's been a good while since I reviewed a Schlenkerla beer as well. I think the last one that we did was the Kreuzen, which was quite interesting. Then before that, what came before that? I think it was just the, you know, the regular ones actually. So I've reviewed the Eiche Doppelbock, which is their Christmas one. I've reviewed the Fastenbier. I've reviewed the Weizen, the Märzen, and I think the regular Helles as well, come to think of it as well. So yeah, and the Urbock would be the other one. So this must be about the 7th or so review that I've done from Schlenkerla here on the channel. But yeah, always nice to return to them. As I say, I hope you guys enjoy this one. But as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Brauerei Heller, Schlenkerla, before, and we will hopefully be able to add a few more to that over the coming years. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, not as often as I would like. I need to sort out a German beer mule actually. But yeah, we'll see about that soon. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Schlenkerla and Brauerei Heller then. So anyway, on to my brewery notes. So the Schlenkerla Brauerei, as I've mentioned to you already, is located in the historic town of Bamberg in Germany, just to the northwest of Nuremberg. But Bamberg is actually a really interesting place because it went largely untouched during the Second World War, and the city's got lots of wineries and monasteries and things around it which you can go and visit. But the Brauhaus itself is in the centre of the old town. They do have a kind of bigger factory brewery, if you like, from what I understand as well, but it's very famous, and this is one of the best known breweries throughout Germany, and I guess it's probably one of the best known German breweries throughout the world actually. Everybody knows about Schlenkerla behind, you know, the only other ones that would be more famous would be like Augustiner or Paulaner, you know, the Munich 6 kind of breweries, but Schlenkerla are very well known across the world. But the original brew house is in Dominikanerstraße in the city, and the Brauhaus was actually neighboured by the Dominican monastery Brewery, hence the name of the street. But the history of the tavern started with the formation of the Dominican monastery back in the 14th century, and the first mention of the brewery was in 1405. But the Brauhaus building was apparently sold a number of times between 1405 and 1615, and during the 30 Years' War, which was 1618 to 1648, the building was destroyed and rebuilt, as happened quite a lot down in Germany, or I think it was the Holy Roman Empire at that time. But the brewery itself was founded in 1678, and before this year, reports are scarce, but there is far more documentation after this year. But since 1678, there have been numerous owners of the brewery, and one of the very important owners was Johann Wolfgang Heller, who took over the brewery in the mid-18th century. So he owned an old rock cellar for beer storage up on the Karlberg Hill just outside of Bamberg. You can go up there and drink beers in the cellar, and I would recommend you do that because you get a beautiful view of the city. But this storage facility was later moved to the Stephansberg Hill, which is actually outside of the town's limits today. But over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries, the brewery was kind of gradually moved to the location just above the ancient cellars of Stephansberg, and that's where they still brew their beers today. But in 1877, Andreas Graser became the owner of the brewery, and he had a slight physical handicap where his arms moved in an odd way when he walked, and in the Franconian dialect this was called Schlenkern, and people after this, they soon began to call his beers Schlenkerla, and the brewery became known gradually as Schlenkerla, despite the official name of the brewery being Hellebräu. So yeah, that's where the name Schlenkerla comes from. It comes from Andreas Graser, who had a little thing with his arms. So yeah, kind of interesting. He is actually on the labels today. You can see him on the little red part of the label down there. But in 1907, Andreas' son Michael took over the running of the brewery, and by this time more and more people were visiting the brewery, and they leased a part of the former monastery from the Bavarian government, who had become owners during the course of secularization. But in the 1920s, the buildings on the Dominicana Klause, which is the chapel of the Dominican monastery, apologies if I pronounced that wrong, these were being restored by the Germanic Museum of Nuremberg during the 1920s. But in 1960, the restored part of the tavern was bought from the government by the company, and Michael Graser's daughter Elizabeth and her husband Jakob Trum took over the running of the company. But in 1967, they passed the brewery down to their son German Trum, and I believe he's still involved in the company a little bit today. But over the years, they've been modernising their brewing facilities, and they've opened new rooms within the Brauhaus and added a beer garden in what was formerly the courtyard of the monastery. And in recent years, the facade of the Brauhaus has been modernised, and the famous historic ceiling painting in the monastery was restored as well. So they've gradually just been, kind of building up the kind of historic parts of the building. If you go there, it is very distinctive and very, very traditional, so you will enjoy it. I've been to the tavern in the middle of Bamberg, and I would highly recommend that you go and check that out for yourself. It's an awesome place to go. In Bamberg itself, there's something like 9 breweries. You've got probably the other famous ones would be Spezial, Zwergla. You have Greifenklau. You've got a few other ones there as well that just aren't coming to mind at the moment. But I've actually reviewed a beer. There's close to Brauerei as well. I've reviewed a beer from all of the Bamberg breweries before, so you can go and check those out. I actually filmed those in Bamberg at my friend Daniel's house. But yeah, Schlenkerla, I think, are by far the most well-known brewery from Bamberg actually. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about these guys. As I say, you should go and visit Bamberg and have a look at it. It's like properly old Germany, which is great. You can go into the tavern, they've got some really nice food there, and I would recommend that you visit the other breweries such as Zwergla and Spezial as well. Those two are right across the road from each other actually, if memory serves me correctly. Marsboy is also another quite famous one. But yeah, as I say, that's all I can say for the moment. So if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. They are fairly active on social media, which is a bit unusual for one of the older kind of traditional German breweries. But yeah, you can also check out Untappd, Rate Beer and Beer Advocate to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that they've done. But like I said, their regular beers would be the Märzen, the Weizen, and they've also got the Urbock in there as well, which is a regular, and they have the regular Helles Lager. They've got the Fasten beer, which comes out every year around Lent. They've also got the Eiche Doppelbock, which is their Christmas release, and I don't know how often the Kreuzen comes out, but I've seen that out and about a few times as well. So this actually may well be the 8th review that I'm doing from them, come to think of it, because those are the ones that I've had a go at before. I think there is an alcohol-free one these days as well. I think they have developed an alcohol-free beer, but yeah. Maybe that's one that I should have a go at. I've not really reviewed any alcohol-free beers here on the channel. But yeah, as I say, check out all those links. But we're going to get on now and have a little taste of this beer and see how we go. So, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty much the same as what you would expect from the other Schlenkerla beers. They've all got different colours and different trims on them, depending on what beer it is. The lager beers have this kind of sort of sky blue kind of background, if you like. I forget what colour the original trim on the original lager beer is, but this one's got the silver trim because it is a special edition. It's also got a silver bottle cap on it as well. But yeah, it's quite interesting. It's definitely interesting. So if I remember rightly, the Fasten beer is purple, the Eiche has the green background and also a silver or a gold trim, if I remember rightly. The Weizen is the yellow one. The Märzen, I think, no, sorry, the Weizen is the green one, the Märzen is the yellow one, the Urbach is the red one, although I have seen that in gold as well, and then you've got the Eich as well, the Kreuzen. I can't remember what the Kreuzen was actually, if it had a slightly different colour. But yeah, like I said to you at the start of the video, this one is 4.3% ABV. It's a Helles lager beer, unfiltered, and it says on the back here, Helles Schlenkerla Lager receives its subtle smokiness through bottom fermentation with yeast from Echt Schlenkerla Rauchbier. Regular Helles lager is clear and yeastless due to the filtration before bottling. This specially unfiltered edition, however, retains the natural haziness and the yeast with its fresh and smoky character. A rare and special treat not only for smoke beer lovers. Schlenkerla.com/lager. So yeah, definitely cool to see them do that. And I think it was Jake O was talking about this on one of the streams at the weekend, is that yeah, the Schlenkerla yeast has evolved over the generations to actually take in some of these kind of smoky characteristics. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But it says on the top of the label here as well, dem Bayerischen Reinheitsgebot entsprechend gebraut. So it basically means it's brewed in accordance with the Bavarian purity law, the Reinheitsgebot. So yeah, half-litre bottle. This one, I think I paid 26. I don't know why 26 is sticking in my head, but I think I paid 25, 26 Swedish kroners for this one. So that's about €2.50, about £2.25 or something like that, and maybe about $3 American for those of you watching in different places. Half-litre bottle. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. But for those of you that don't know, the definition of a lager is bottom fermenting yeast, cold temperature fermentation, usually between 10 and 12 degrees. Although there will be a bit of variance on that, usually between 10 and 12 degrees from what I remember. Ales, of course, are top fermenting and they ferment at slightly higher temperatures, you know, like 15 to 18 degrees and stuff like that. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you're looking at some of these beers. But yeah, let's just be careful and get this guy poured into the glass. We're getting a nice head on this one actually. This looks good. Yeah, we have to crack out the proper tankard for this beer. I always like an excuse to get this out. Lager beers should not be sold in anything less than half litres in my opinion, but I can understand why small breweries do it to get their beer out there a little bit more. But yeah, this certainly looks very nice. The carbonation is actually quite active in this one. So yeah, as you can see, the beer has poured with a bit over a 2-finger, with a bit over 2 fingers of a frothy, I would actually say perfect white head. It's got a nice kind of very slightly hazy golden colour too. I'm just going to check that there's not, oh, there's only a tiny little bit of sediment left in the bottom of the bottle there. But yeah, it's got a nice little bit of a natural haze to it. You can see it's a kind of rich golden straw colour. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see it does have a little bit of clarity, which you would expect. And you know, it varies from brewery to brewery with these Helles lager beers, what level of haziness you're going to get from them. But yeah, quite an active carbonation in this one. I rinsed out the glass beforehand actually, but it still seems to have got a little bit of things on it. It might just be tiny little particles of dust and stuff, but whatever. But yeah, it certainly looks the part of a Helles lager. This one, nothing overly surprising about the beer in terms of its appearance from that perspective. But yeah, let's get this guy, let's have a look at the aroma of this guy and see how we get on. Nothing particularly surprising about the appearance then. It smells very nice. It does smell very nice. It's kind of like they described on the bottle actually. You know, it's got that typical Munich Helles type thing to it, but just a little tiny hint of smokiness. And it's yeah, the yeast, I think, as I was saying earlier, and as Jake kind of said at the weekend, it's kind of evolved to be a little bit more, it's kind of evolved to just take in a little bit of this kind of smoky characteristic and things, which is great. So yeah, they've got proper house yeast here, absolutely. So yeah, the aroma in this beer though is just, you know, absolutely lovely. So straight away with this one, you're going to smell that soft kind of white bready character coming out of it. It's got a lovely just soft white bready backbone to it. There's a little bit of an almost brown bready note to the beer as well, a few kind of bread crusty elements, but just it smells as if infused into that you've got this kind of, you've got that typical sort of beechwood smoke sort of thing coming out of it. The malts that they use at Schlenkerla, from what I understand, are produced by Bayern. And the Bayern Rauch malts are very, very distinctive actually. That Bayern malt house building, they've got their own little pilot brewery that you can check out, and you know, their malts are just very, very distinctive. The German smoke malts, the Rauch malts, are quite distinctive because they taste sort of meaty and woody, whereas if you have the Scottish smoke malts, the peaty ones for example, those are a bit kind of grassy and earthy. But yeah, you can definitely smell that lovely sort of meaty, woody beechwood smokiness out of this beer. You can definitely get a little bit of that in here, but I think, yeah, there's no Rauch malt in this. All of that is coming from the yeast, absolutely, because if it was from the Rauch malt, the beer would be a different colour, and you know, you would smell it a lot more intensely than you do. But remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on two things: one, the type of malts that you use, and then two, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar's caramelised, thus you get a darker colour of beer. If you used Rauch malt in this beer, I can guarantee you it would be darker in colour than it is, absolutely. But yeah, the aroma of that bready base that this beer has is very nice. You get a few hints of like a McVitie's digestive sort of biscuity kind of thing out of it. There's a teeny little hint of brown sugar there, but I would say it's more biscuity, and it's more yeah, it's more sort of bread crusty. Yes, soft bread, white bread and brown bread in there, bread crusty, the sort of smoke, the beechwoody kind of smoke infused into it. You do get one or two little woody aromas pushing their way out of the beer later on, but then you've got some nice kind of biscuity qualities in there as well. So I really like how all of that pieces together in this one. The aroma in this beer, I think, is very, very nice actually. So well done to Schlenkerla on the malty side of things there. On the hoppy side of things, it is kind of what you would expect of German noble hops. It's got a little bit of that smooth earthiness that you'd expect from the Hallertau or Tettnanger hops. I suspect that it's more likely to be Hallertau in this one. The Hallertau region is in Bavaria, so that kind of makes sense. Tettnang, of course, is over in Baden-Württemberg. So yeah, more likely to be Hallertau in this one, but it's got a nice kind of bright floral aromaticity to it, which you would kind of expect, but at the same time, it does retain a bit of smoothness, which is kind of what you'd want from this beer. And then you've also got some light sort of grassy elements at the front of the nose as well. In terms of fruitiness, you know, it's got a little touch of pear, a little bit of apple in it, you know, maybe teeny hints of a wee bit of fig or something like that. But yeah, you know, for a Helles lager beer, it's the typical things: apple, a little bit of apple, a little bit of pear, and a wee touch of a grassy, citrusy thing, and maybe a tiny little hint of a, say, what do you call it? A wee figgy character, if that makes sense. But yeah, lovely aroma out of this one, and very, very interesting. It's been a long time since I had the original Helles Schlenkerla, so I'll need to see about doing that with my friend Peter from the Clueless Drinker. He and I are looking at doing a German collaboration review series, so we'll see about getting that started fairly soon. But yeah, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of this one before you get stuck into it. This one is the Helles Schlenkerla Lagerbier Unfiltered, a special edition from Brauerei Hella Bamberg, also known as the Schlenkerla Brauerei. So let's get stuck into this one. 4.3% Helles Unfiltered. Let's get stuck in. Really curious about this. Slange, skål, cheers, prost. Yeah, that is pretty nice. That is pretty nice. Yeah, one thing I want to say in this review as well, I want to dedicate this review to my friend Daniel and his wife Johanna. Johanna unfortunately lost her father very, very recently, just maybe about a week or two before I'm filming this review, and he was a lovely man. Axel was a lovely, lovely man, so massive, you know, massive love to him and the Steinbrink family in this review, and the Waldhofs as well. So dedicate this one to them. It's always kind of horrible when something like that happens. But you know, Daniel was the one who got me into the German beers, and you know, I've drank many of these with Daniel, and we had a few with Axel at a couple of times as well, which was great. So, you know, it's nice to kind of dedicate this review to him as well. So yeah, it's a bit sad actually to be drinking this beer and to think that that's happened, but you know, that's kind of life. You need to sort of get on with things. But yeah, dedicate this one to Axel Steinbrink in his memory. Lovely man. But yeah, let's kind of break down the flavour of this beer and see how we go. So, straight away across the middle of your palate then, you get a nice kind of smooth, bready character to the beer. And it is nice. You can definitely, from memory, you can definitely tell that this one is a little bit smoother. And I mean, the yeast is going to do that. You know, the Czech lager beers tend to be more yeasty, and they've got that smooth kind of bready character about them. This one has the same. So nice kind of smooth white bready quality there, just going right across the middle of your palate. It does develop a little bit of a slightly wholemeal bready kind of thing the more that you drink of it as well. But that's the baseline of your beer. That is the backbone of this beer. In the middle third of your palate, smooth bready notes there. Either side of that middle third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of woody. You have got a nice little bit of a kind of, how would you say? You've got a little bit of a kind of thicker bready note either side, then a bit more of a kind of grainy bread crusty side, grainy bread crusty kind of note in those border regions between first and middle third of your palate and middle and back third of your palate. So yeah, that's an interesting point. But the smoky kind of character in this one, it really feels infused into the whole kind of bready side of this beer. Absolutely, that's what you get out of this one for sure. And the smokiness is quite you know, the smokiness that you get in this one is definitely how do you say, the smokiness that you get out of this one is definitely very infused, and it's really quite woody. It's that, you know, it's that typical beechwood sort of thing. It's got a little bit of meatiness, and you can feel the smokiness just come out a little bit in the middle third of your palate as well. So yeah, in the very centre of your middle third of your tongue, there's a bit of a sweet kind of caramelly note there, and as you move out from the centre, it does gradually build up to be a little bit more kind of, it does gradually move out to be a little bit more kind of biscuity and sort of McVitie's digestive like. Absolutely, you do get quite a lot of that out of this one there, but yeah, it's just really nice and really smooth. I mean, it's definitely one of the kind of breadier, yeastier sort of Helles lager beers that you're going to come across, but I think it works very well. And the way the slight thickness that it has, the slightly bigger thickness I should say, slightly higher thickness, my English is getting terrible these days, the slightly higher thickness that this beer has, it suits the slightly smoky character of the beer. Absolutely. But yeah, I think other than that, there's not too much to say about the kind of middle third of your palate, to be honest with you. If you go on to the back third of your palate, it definitely has a little bit more of a kind of grainy element to it. You definitely get a wee bit more of a kind of wholemealy bready sort of thing on that back third of your palate, and you can feel that it's distinctly more kind of thick as well, which is nice. But then yeah, as you move from the back third of your palate, you can feel the yeast is kind of sitting on top of there, and just you get a gradual sort of thinning down of the beer as you go across the kind of middle third of your palate. So you can definitely feel the beer just kind of, the thickness just going down, and that's the yeast that's giving you that lovely kind of transition there. And the yeast, of course, does have a wee bit of that kind of smoky character to it, but it's a lovely, it's just a lovely beer, this one. I'm going to enjoy sipping on the rest of this after the review, absolutely. It's very straight shooting. I mean, the other Schlenkerlas, particularly the Urbock and the Eiche, those are very complex. This one's just a little bit more kind of straight shooting actually, which I really like. Yeah, this one is quite nice. It's actually, it reminds me a little bit in some ways of the Spezial Rauch beer, although that's you know, that one's not quite as bready. It's actually a bit, the Spezial one's a little bit kind of cleaner than this, but I think the Spezial one might be filtered, which makes sense. But yeah, this one, in terms of the level of smokiness and things that you get out of this beer, this is definitely a little bit more akin to the Spezial Rauch beer than it is to what you would normally associate with Schlenkerla. So just be aware of that. Just be aware of that. But yeah, the flavour that this one has, I think, it's really, really nice. This is probably a good introduction to the idea of smoke in a beer for those who are not, you know, typically accustomed to it. But yeah, that covers the malty and yeasty side of things quite well, I think. You do get one or two little woody notes come out of the middle of your palate a bit later on as well. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, smooth kind of earthiness in the back corner of the palate. They are not too prominent, but as you move further forward from that, the beer does get a little touch more kind of herbal. And as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a nice little bit of floral aromaticity to it as well. Not too bright or spicy or anything like that, but just, you know, quite nicely done. Round the front curve of the palate, the beer has a nice little bit of a sort of grassy, zesty kind of thing to it as well, which I can really appreciate. So yeah, nice little bit of grassy zestiness to the beer as well. But it's not that, again, that's not too powerful either. But yeah, on that front third of your palate, that's where you get the nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. But yeah, as I said, on that border region between front and middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a slightly thicker bready note there and a little bit more of a kind of bread crusty grainy quality. Then underneath that front third of your palate, you've got a nice kind of smoothness there, as I say, and that, it strikes me as being quite, you know, white bread like, but also a little bit yeasty as well. But the fruity notes are not too prominent in this beer, and to be honest, you'd kind of expect that. Yeah. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is kind of interesting because it does have a wee, very light, it's got a teeny little bit of fig in it. There's a teeny little bit of that in there, which is interesting. But yeah, for me, it's really quite peary. It's quite a peary ester that you get out of this one, and it does get a wee bit more kind of appley towards the front of that front third of your tongue, and there's just a wee bit of a kind of grassy, citrusy kind of thing on the front tip of your tongue as well. So I really like how all of that goes together. Actually, it's got a very interesting composition to it. In my opinion, the fruity side of this beer, I think, suits everything else that's going on. But yeah, there's lots of things going on in this one. This beer, it's straight shooting compared to the other beers that you're going to get from Schlenkerla, but it's quite you know, it's still got a little bit of complexity for it. If you consider it as a Helles lager, there is still a fair wee bit of complexity to this one, but it definitely has my approval. I think it's a bit of a shame if they only do this one like as a special release, because it's really nice actually. So, and it wouldn't, I don't think it would be so difficult for them to turn this into a fairly, you know, they produce the Helles all the time. All they need to do is not filter it, and then they've got another kind of regular beer here actually. So maybe they can release this once a year as a special or something like that. I think that would be really quite interesting. But what I would love to see Schlenkerla do is like